Hey, so I'm Uzo, and I'm here to show you our new instrument. Well, they're not that new. You've probably seen one of these before. But have you seen it do this? So yeah, let's take a look. So, what's the deal here? We've got the APseq Mini Mark II, and you may have seen this used for launching clips and controlling the mixer in Ableton, but we've programmed it so it can do a lot more now. That being said, everything is happening in the software, and all these controls are MIDI mappable, so you can map them to your own controller or just use it with your keyboard and mouse. Probably wouldn't be as fun. For the full experience, I'd recommend getting the APseq. It's a great controller. You can pick it up on Amazon for €80, and they've got a 30-day return policy. So throughout this, I'm probably going to show most of the features on the APseq, just because the way we've designed it is so that you don't have to look at the screen, so you can have a full hardware experience with the convenience of software. But just know, you could do it all in there. You could do it all with your own controller. I'm just going to do it here because it's more fun, and that's what we've designed. All right, so what can it do? So we've got a 16-step sequencer with trig conditions, ratchets, probability, clock divider with triplet and dotted rhythms, last step, random playback modes, random fill modes, velocity variations, synced resets, and plenty more, to be honest. That's a quick run through, but obviously we'll take a closer look. Let's start simple. It's only 16 steps after all, right? Not quite, but we'll get back to that. So by the way, all the sounds are going to be a dry stock 808 kit. I know it's boring, but I'll leave you to imagine what more interesting samples sound like. I wanted to use samples that everyone knows, everyone can recognize, so you can really hear what the sequencer's doing, and then you can go crazy with it as you wish. Let's get into it. Alright, so we've got 4 velocities for every step. Loudest in red, next loudest in orange, lowest in yellow, ratchets in blue, and you can control the settings for those ratchets. We'll get onto that later. But it wouldn't be a drum machine without Jeff Mills style retriggers, right? So that's what this is for. And you can do those quantized to 16. You can already hear what can happen if you play with the retriggers. You can knock it out of phase with Ableton's transport. So the button next to it is for correcting that. It will basically retrigger quantize to the next bar. So you can go ham and then reset it on the next bar. Electronic musicians have more to worry about than pressing the button at the right time. There's a lot else going on. So what else do we have? I guess we got last step, which is this slider over here. At the moment it's set to 16, so the sequence is running from 1 to 16, but we could change that. So now I've set it to 11, and you might notice the orange indicator only goes to this step before it goes back. Also, I don't know if you saw the number readout, super useful, so you don't have to look at the screen, so you can set a number precisely, and you just still have that drum machine experience. This is an 11 step. You can hear how it evolves, allows you to break out of that 16 step. But something that might be useful is to be able to reset that every X number of bars. So that's what this feature's for. You turn it on here and then set the number by holding it and sliding. So that's reset every 3 bars. So it allows you to add a bit of interest and complexity to still evolving pattern, but it gives an extra layer. Let's reset that. Back to 16 steps. 4/4. Good old boring 4/4. What else we get? There's 4 different sequencer modes. The one we were seeing at the moment, which is your standard 1 to 16. But there's also a random mode, Now that random mode is the most random one. It can choose any step 1 to 16 at each step. So basically chaos to punch in when you want to break or fill, something to switch up. Then there's a second random mode which constrains that range. At the moment I have it set to 12. I could change that to 11. Basically it allows you to choose how much random there will be and how much retriggering of the similar range of steps there will be. Hard to explain, easy to play with. You can see the orange indicators where the sequencer is. So if I set that to a really low number, there's going to be a lot of re-triggers of the same step. And you set it to a higher number, and it's going to be similar to the first random mode where it's all steps could be picked. Yep, hopefully that's clear enough. And then the other mode, not really a mode, but it allows you to essentially stop the sequencer from triggering. Really useful for giving pauses and leaving gaps. But the sequencer still runs in the background, so it stays in phase with Ableton's transport. It just won't trigger anything. So you can see the orange indicator goes away and then it comes back where it would have been if you hadn't pressed it. Whilst this is a 16-step sequencer, you can set the last step all the way up to 32, which is 2 bars, which allows you to leave a bit of space, because I mean, what you say is just as important as what you don't say. So, you know, see what I did there? We can do the same with a sequence. So now there's 1 bar of space after our little boring pattern. So yeah, that's something that you can use, and also obviously doesn't have to be 32. You could crank that down to 27 and you can get more into weirder territory for the experimental heads. Alright, so what's next? I think we've got trigger conditions. So those allow you to only fire a step every 2nd round or 3rd round or 4th round up to 8. So now this ratchet is only triggering on every other cycle, but that could be every 3rd cycle or 4th, 5th, 7th. Yeah, so let me add a couple more steps here, mess around. I'll put this one on every 3 out of 4, this one every 2. And you can see which ones have trigger conditions set because they glow compared to the hard colors of the other steps. And you can also change it and maintain the same step condition, and it will still keep that setting. The thing is, when you take the step off, by default that will remove the trigger condition settings, but you can change that in the software here. That's what this button's for. So now if I take the step off, I can put it back and it'll still have the trigger condition set, but if I turn that setting back on, when I take it off and put it back, it's not got any trigger condition set. So I figured that's something people might want different behavior on, so I put that setting in there. So next we've got the clock divider. Essentially you have complete control over the rate that the sequencer goes relative to live transport. It doesn't have to be fixed. At the moment it's on 16ths, which is the default. You hold this button here, and you can see it's on 16ths there. We have 16ths, triplets and dotted. So if I wanted to put it on halftime, I would select this. And you can see the rate that that orange indicator is going is half the time it used to be. Half of that. Or we can go to 30 seconds. Now we're running real fast. Back to 16th. And you might have noticed we're still in phase with the live transport. When you change the clock division, it's quantized, I believe, to the next quarter note. Actually, let's test that. Yeah, next quarter note. So whilst you can knock it out of phase deliberately, it's still going to be from the next quarter note, so it doesn't let you go too crazy, but you can still play with it and deliberately knock things out of phase. And then of course we have triplet timing, so we can get chuggy. And then also dotted as well. So yeah, have fun playing with that, experimenting with that. It's useful for creating breaks, and also if you have multiple layers, it's great to have something running at triplets or dotted rhythms whilst there's something running in 16ths or 8ths or 30 seconds. It allows complexity within a pattern as a whole. At the moment we're just looking at one APseq module, but there's I guess experimental pro tier where you can stack 8 of these with an instance management, which is a lot of fun, I've got to say, because then you have all of these features times by 8. You can get really complex patterns going. So yeah, let's go on to the next. Okay, so bear with me whilst I make this pattern really robotic for a second. So obviously we have loud kicks on every downbeat and all these ghost kicks in between. So here we have the chance sliders, which allows us to introduce some randomness, not like before where it was across the whole pattern and every step. Here it's controlled by velocity levels. So we have the ratchets here, the lowest velocity, medium velocity, highest velocity. So all of these are on the low velocity settings, so I'm going to reduce their chance of triggering. Which can lead to more interesting patterns and also give you the ability to do DJ style mutes. So on these loud accent kicks, I can cut them, bring back in, but also I could leave it somewhere between. Yeah, probably not the best pattern to show this with because it's pretty boring, but when you incorporate it with the other features, it can get really fun and complex and yeah, keep evolving. You're probably wondering what these other sliders do. These are to control the velocity variation. Okay, so I'm going to set them all to the same level so it's very obvious what's going on. These control the velocity variation for each accent level. So these are the lowest. I'm going to bring it up. So now our drum machine's slightly less robotic, maybe on cyborg territory. Let's bring it up. Is he human yet? Nah, not quite. But yeah, it allows you to bring in some humanization, I guess, to the velocity levels, because I mean, if you were actually hitting something, there's no way you could hit it exactly the same loudness each time, right? But instead of it just being across the whole pattern as a whole, we've broken it out to each velocity level. So I can change that for the loud kicks, I can change that for can change that for basically each level as I wish. And yeah, once you combine that with the other features, you can get really interesting bumpy grooving patterns. So yeah, let's do a couple examples where I can run you through something slightly more musical and see what I get. So yeah, something I didn't mention, the sequencer doesn't have to go from forward to backwards or random. It can go, instead of forwards, it can go backwards, it can go forwards and then backwards. That's what this button does here. So now I've set it to go backwards, which is why it's lit. Now it's going forwards, then backwards, and forwards. Cool ping pong. Or you can set it back to just go forwards. Another thing I didn't touch on is swing. So if you hold this one and slide up and down, I'll make it really exaggerated. I would never put swing this high, but you know, it's nice to have the option, but somewhere in between is probably better. And basically what that's doing is delaying every second 16th and every fourth as well. So there's a swung element to it, but if you want straight timing, just whack it all the way down and we're back to robot land. So I've set it to 20% and I think that's pretty bumpy. Alright, aware this is probably getting long at this stage, so I'll wrap it up. There's a couple of features left. We have fills, so I simplified the pattern a little bit, and basically it's a random generating fill circuit, and let's activate it now. So I think it's really useful for like punching in and bringing some unexpected randomness into your pattern. There's a couple features as well to tweak how it works. At the moment, you just heard it on its kind of most random way, but there is a way to add ramps to those triggers that are brought in from the fill circuit. So I've just activated that now. If you hear it again. So then you can kind of get ratchets happening, sounds a bit more musical. Also the different random modes over here. So before, similar to the sequencer random modes, the one we listened to before was the random mode number 1. This is random mode number 2, which determines the clock that the fill generator circuit's running at. So you can constrict the range, which I have currently set to 9. So what I've just done there is, like I showed before, you can stop the sequencer from running even though it's running in the background, but the fill circuit has its own set of rules. So you can turn the sequencer off and turn the fill circuit on. So yeah, it gives you a bit more flexibility to cut it in and out and have it as you wish. I kind of like to think of it as like a fun counterpoint. You can play with how the sequencer merges with the fill and also just have the fill and then go back to the sequencer after you made some changes. Yeah, it's like something fun to play with essentially. But just keep in mind it's random, so sometimes it'll be great, sometimes it'll surprise you, sometimes it'll surprise you for the worst. So yeah, it is, can't always have it all. And yeah, at the bottom you have the option to include ratchets within the random. I typically turn that off because it can get hectic as it is, but you can turn it on if you want a bit more chaos. And then in the software you also have the option to add accents as well, which for the brave ones out there. Next we have the ratchet controls. So let me add some ratchets here. So first we have the ratchet count. You can set it by holding this and sliding. So we're at 3, we're at 4, we're at 6. So now there's a lot more triggers within that one ratchet step or 2 ratchet steps. Typically I leave this around like 3 or something, but up to you. And then we also have the spread, so how tightly spaced together those ratchets are. Higher numbers further spread, lower numbers more tightly spaced. So now they're almost at like triplet territory. For me, like around 30, 40 is pretty good, but have a play with it, up to you. Obviously it would depend on how many ratchets you have set. So if you set 6, any space them out further can drift further into the other steps, but if not, so for these ratchet steps, you can choose whether you want the velocities to be the same for all of them or if you want a ramp applied. If you do have a ramp applied, you can choose whether that is an increasing ramp or a decreasing ramp over here in the software, or like how I leave it is on the question mark, which will randomly choose between decreasing and increasing ramps on those ratchets, and then you enable the ramp behavior there. yeah, it's just to add a bit more interest, especially in a pattern where you have lots of ratchets, it can make them sound more evolving. Something you might want to do is automate these ratchet features with Ableton. The automation features are amazing. So yeah, that can allow you to have like per step ratchet settings essentially, and then play that out across your sequence. You could also change the automation to run on different lengths in the pattern. Just some ideas there for you to play with. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all the features I wanted to touch on. Let me pause this for a second so we don't go crazy. Yeah, our main goal for this was to give you a hardware experience with the convenience of software, as I mentioned before. So you don't have to look at the screen, can play away with the drum machine, and then also take it with you on the move, you know, whenever you want to open up the project again, tweak it, mix down on the train or on the plane, or you know, stay in your home studio in your pajamas. That's perfectly cozy, and I would do the same too. So yeah, like however you want to do it, essentially you have that freedom. That's what software brings. So yeah, who's this for? So for now, it's just for Ableton Live users who can run Macs. That's anyone with Ableton Live Suite or Ableton Live with a separate Macs license. We will one day climb that VST mountain, but not anytime in the near future. I guess on the plus side, most electronic producers are using Ableton. But yeah, I do know there's a couple like Bitwig users and some other people. So sorry, not for now, but we will get to you eventually. And yeah, everything we've looked at up until now has been the freebie version. So I'll leave a link in the description. Go grab it from our website. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of features in there. The only thing is you're limited to only one MIDI note. So for this video, being sequencing the kick, but there's a X8 version where you basically have all the power of this multiplied by 8, so you can have a full drum machine experience with your kicks and your snares and your hi-hats sequence on different clock divisions and randomness, and yeah. Possibilities are endless. Have a lot of fun with it. I'd really appreciate if you support the project and get the X8 version. But if you just grab the freebie, no worries. Have a lot of fun. That's what we're here for. It will come with a PDF manual, a little template set as well, so you're ready to get started. And yeah, the manual is better explained than I could do on this video. So yeah, hopefully it's all clear. But if not, shoot me a message and I'll answer your questions. But yeah, it was really fun building this. The X8 version definitely took some time to get the instance management working, and yeah, getting the sync between all the different lanes running or instances running was yeah, a bit of a challenge. So that's why it's got a price tag to it. But yeah, I mean, hopefully you can have a lot of fun with it. Looking forward to seeing what you guys can do, and let us know how you get on. Let's see what you're creating with it. I can't wait to see what the world can do with it. So yeah, catch you soon.